Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Ascendent Sky by Ocha, narrated by Robbie MacLeòid. Prologue. Eilidh could not recall how he got here. He could not even begin to explain where here was. He remembered being flung upon the wave of spirit towards earth. He remembered being severed from the bosom of his god. He remembered hovering in a formless state above the blue-green jewel that was the planet his mistake had annihilated. Eilidh could not remember what had happened next. He had flashes of memory, that was certain. An ancient tree in a strange meadow of green. A pull towards something. An urge to respond, to rend himself from his torment. But until that moment, Eilidh wasn't sure he had even had a name. In 1,000 cycles of service to the Ascended Alliance, he had presided over 3 ascensions. Every ascending world was different, but they had one thing in common. To qualify for ascension, they had to prove themselves worthy of the Ascension Directive. Every world that joined the Alliance had to show, for lack of a better term, that they had learnt how to play well with others. To minimize harm, greed, violence. To recognize the abundance of the breadth of the universe's bounty. To know that there was more than enough for everyone in it to thrive. Earth. Well, to say Earth was an accident was like calling an active supervolcano's mass extinction power a bit of an inconvenience. But Earth, yes, Earth. That was where Eilidh now found himself. Beyond his own mistake, that infinitesimal miscalculation that had directed the Ascension's wave of spirit not only to the wrong planet, but, in the extent of that angle's ultimate trajectory, to the wrong galaxy, something else had gone terribly wrong. His god had told him he would observe, not just part of Earth's ascension, but all of it. But he could not. He was not hovering above the Earth as he briefly had. He had landed upon the planet's surface somehow. How, he could not say. That wasn't supposed to happen. Think, Eilidh. First thing was that he needed to find out where he was in relation to anything. All he could see was green. He tried to remember what he could of Earth, from the flash of a moment he'd had when frantically attempting to find out what sort of planet he'd targeted for ascension. Carbon-based life forms. Large oceanic coverage. Plants that photosynthesized by means of chlorophyll, hence the green. Eilidh had not visited a non-ascended planet in hundreds of cycles, and in truth, he hadn't still, for Earth's ascension had begun. But why was it so green? Eilidh could not make out whether he had a corporeal form. Everything felt hazy, as if he had lingered too close to the well when it was full. Perhaps he had at that. One thing, however, maintained crystalline clarity. Eilidh had not been an angry being. He experienced the full spectrum of emotions, to be sure, but he had never considered himself prone to pride or rage. What need had an immortal servant of the gods of such things? But now, oh, with no warning, with no chance at redemption or explanation, no second chance, his god had flung him into the abyss of this unworthy planet. He had not truly realized that his fury had fed itself. Energy existed at all times and none. Time and space were obsolete when it came to ascension. They both were and were not. Earth's ascension had begun the moment Eilidh had made his error, and his travel to Earth, on the wave of energy, of spirit, that caused the ascension, had happened as instantaneously as such things can. Now, Eilidh realized that he could feel. Again, he heard the voice of his god. "You do take responsibility," she had said. "You shall. For your foolishness, you shall bear witness to what you have caused. The planet affected was not ready to ascend. Its people and its creatures were far from ready to ascend. Your folly has forced this upon them, and they will tear each other apart. And the world that has waited for its ascension will be forced to wait yet longer. This is the price of your failure that billions will bear in your stead. For that, I must act. What right did even a god to condemn him for a single mistake?" Eilidh's anger grew as his memories returned. To spend 1,000 cycles watching this lowly planet fail in the face of a gift they could not even measure. How dare she decide this was justice? So quickly, too. She had not hesitated. She had only flung him into nothingness, without so much as a thought for the 1,000 cycles of faithful service he had rendered to the gods. Now he was here. Now he had no choice remaining but to exist in this pitiful planet. Contempt germinated in Eilidh's core. First a sprout, then a vine, then a creeper that wove its way through him, until, against all his expectations and his gods, his essence clung to that creeper of contempt. Around it, Eilidh was given form. If he was to be in exile on this inconsequential rock, surely the universe itself had blessed him. It had freed him from the shackles of his unforgiving God. He took shape, and he took his first true look around. The more he solidified, the more he felt. His fury burned away his guilt, replacing it with something hotter, more alive. Eilidh was alive. He was alive on a planet ascending, and he would take full advantage of his own accident. The creatures here, they knew nothing of the ways of spirit, but Eilidh did. Eilidh would remake this world. If his god had shunned him, he would simply rise from the depths of her disappointment. This planet had no gods. They had no magic. Until now. Eilidh already had magic. He felt it flowing into him through the veins of his fury. He would be the first of this planet's gods. When his 1,000 cycles had passed, he would face his previous deity not only as her equal, but as her better. Chapter 1. I had to hand it to Eilidh. How she'd been so certain I would come after her was a question I'd need to ask as soon as I caught up with her, but that was moot for now. The intricate glyphs of spirit she'd laid out like breadcrumbs for us to follow, though, that was not moot. That was art. I'd travelled with her for days on end, fought side by side with her in life-or-death battles Gwydiod, and she knew for a fact that I used connection almost constantly. More than that, she was familiar with the signature of my spirit. She knew I'd be the one looking for her. She'd counted on it. Every time I cast the spell, tendrils of spirit caught her golden glyphs. On tree trunks, on the winter-browned bracken just starting to give way to spring growth, on boulders. Eilidh had thoroughly and meticulously given us a path to follow, keyed specifically to me, and me alone. I wasn't ready to unpack that, so instead I just stayed glued to her trail like a goddamn magical bloodhound. For 3 days we trekked away from Oban after working so hard to reach the town in the first place. We'd made it into the depths of a pine forest after skirting the northern edge of Loch Avidh, and once we came out the other side, we'd once again be on the edge of Loch Awe, though this time on the western shore. The forest would have felt oppressive, dense evergreens crowding in on us as we frantically searched. I had a vague memory of a deciduous forest on the western edge of Loch Awe, where at least the lack of leaves on the march trees would let more sunlight filter in. But for the present, that didn't matter. Instead, it just felt eerily quiet. All that mattered was that I knew there was a thread of magic connecting me to who we sought. I would have been tearing my hair out if Eilidh had actually been captured by Lord Edwin Thomas Sackington's arsehole thugs. But Eilidh was as canny as she was dangerous, which is to say, very. A fact that my best mate's banter behind me was trying to diminish as they cartoonishly argued over what her D&D class would be. "Cleric," Ian was saying stubbornly. "With that strength stat," Rona snorted, somehow right behind my ear, making both Ian and Meeksy jump. The teenage girl hadn't hit her second decade of life yet, but her own class was Wraith, and none of us could ever really be sure where she was if she hadn't chosen to be visible. Meeksy craned his neck to look for Rona, but gave up quickly, tossing his shiny black ponytail of hair over his shoulder. "The kid's right." "Not a kid," came Rona's voice, from farther away that time. "Eilidh's a paladin, or I'm a block of tofu," Meeksy finished. "She's neither," I said. Irritation threatened to overtake me. "She's a G-knitter. And Lord Bobag's goons are going to drop the forest on our heads if you goons don't shut your gobs." "Well, chuck me in the steamer and call me edamame," Meeksy muttered. "How come she gets the Gallic class?" This was going to give me a migraine. "If I ever encounter someone from the Ascended Alliance, I promise to ask them how they make their mercurial linguistic decisions," I said. "Now, if we could." I didn't get a chance to finish my sentence because Ian's arm cracked me across the sternum, stopping me in my tracks. Ow! Armour or no, my oldest mate had an arm like a bloody steel girder. By now, we'd all learnt the rules of this ascended world. Number 1. If someone stops you in the wilds, shut up first, whinge later. Number 2. Anything is possible. As I followed Ian's gaze through the dense forest's tree cover, I immediately saw why he'd brought my talking and our movement to an abrupt halt. Spunkies, as they'd be called in Scots. Shinochan, in Gaelic. And in English, glowing lights in the wilds were usually best known as will-o'-the-wisps. And jack-o'-lantern, before that got co-opted by the Americans as something you make with a pumpkin and a candle. My mum had still kept to the traditional turnips. But the bluish light through the green of the dim forest afternoon was neither pumpkin nor turnip related. No, this was just a glow, aloft where it shouldn't be, drifting like thistledown on a non-existent breeze. Not just one, either. A ragtag line of them led off into the woods, in the opposite direction to where we were tracking Eilidh's glyphs. After a moment, Rona appeared, looking exasperated. Her brown hair was plaited back from her face, but there was a bit of moss clinging to a spot just behind her ear. What on earth had she been doing? "Why'd you stop?" she asked, then simply looked in the direction all of us were staring. "Oh, never mind." We all stood there, watching the wisps float through the darkened woods. "Reckon we have 2 options," Ian said. "We can follow them and either wander pointlessly all night or run into some ascended monster out of nightmare itself, which could bite us in the arse. Or we ignore them and go on our merry way and possibly leave something to flank us, which could more literally bite us in the arse." Knowing it might be futile for decision-making purposes, I cast connection, expecting only to see Eilidh's glyphs. Except the one I'd found last was nowhere to be seen. I turned to seek out the previous one. She'd been diligent about keeping them in easy line of sight, but it was as if they'd never been there at all. Not even so much as a spark of spirit lit up gold. "Shit," I said. "Uh-oh." Meeksy shifted his broad shoulders and turned to eye me askance. "I think the decision might just have been made for us," I said slowly. "Whatever this is, it seems to have somehow erased Eilidh's glyphs." Rona's eyebrows drew together in worry, and she opened her mouth, pausing before she seemed to think better of speaking altogether, and shut it again with the click of teeth. My entire midsection wanted to revolt at the very thought of losing Eilidh's trail, but if I let that take me over now, we might never make it out of these woods. Whatever those wisps are, it's too much of a coincidence to presume they're acting independently of the disappearance of the glyphs. Correlation wasn't causation, but it would be a muckle leap to think two bizarre occurrences out of the blue had happened at the exact same time without being related. When the others nodded, I went on. Which means something wants us to follow the wisps. Whether they want to eat us or talk to us, though, that's the question. Calum, Rona said, as if she were speaking to a thick-headed toddler. Have you met literally anything yet that just wanted to talk to us and not eat us? Salin, I said promptly, which also triggered a pang. I missed that wee furball. And the starling that spied on Bobag, and the stags, and the horses, the pigeon that flew our message back to Oban. You're stretching the definition of talk to breaking point there, mate, Ian muttered. But fair play. Not everything wants to eat us. If this whatever it is wanted to eat us, it could probably think of a more fun way to go about it than sending us on a wild goose chase through the woods, Meeksy agreed. Though mythologically speaking, I guess plenty of monsters thought that was a cracking good time, so who knows? Feeling like it was probably as futile as the first attempt, I cast connection again, this time focusing more on the wisps themselves. I tried to keep myself from panicking about losing Eilidh's trail. The others' bickering faded into a hum as I quieted my mind, breathing with the flows of spirit around me. My new affinity was called synthesis, and I could almost feel it as it worked in the background of my nature affinities passives. Guhishal, Guhart, all things below, all things above. Tuvamui, Tuvastai, inside, outside. Spirit connected me to all of it, and through that, a burning ember of pathos, almost too faint to see in the glowing wisps of will. Will. I almost laughed when it clicked. Will of the bloody wisps, indeed. Gingerly, I felt for that thread of spirit that was my spell, prodded it until it came in contact with the nearest wisp. The moment it did, I lost my breath. Connection dropped away, leaving me dumbfounded as the patter of my pal's banter swam back into focus in my ears. Hey, Rona was saying, looking at me even as she waved an impatient hand in Ian's face. I said hey! At that, both Ian and Meeksy halted their back and forth bickering about the nature of ascended creatures' motivations, and they both turned to stare at me. Well, I said, clearing my throat when my voice cracked awkwardly on the word. I guess every day's a school day. What the hell's that supposed to mean? Ian asked, exasperated. It means we've just stumbled across the first ascended being who does just want to talk to us. I pointed towards the line of wisps, the certainty of that brief contact with the creature's will filling me with both eagerness and trepidation. We'll find Eilidh's trail again afterwards. You're sure? Meeksy said. Because if this thing tries to eat us, and we end up dying and abandoning Eilidh to Lord Bobag and the parade of sphincters he calls flunkies. Believe me, I interrupted him before he could get farther than that. I did not want to think about Lord Bobag or sphincters of any kind. If I thought that was going to happen, I would be hightailing it in the other direction. What exactly did it say to you? Rona said, peering at me with an uncomfortable amount of trust in her brown eyes. It didn't say anything. I felt their intentions. I swallowed, shaking off the sense of just how daft that sounded, and how hard everyone here would have laughed if I'd said such a thing a month ago. More to the point, everything in me screamed that I should trust this instinct. All I know is that we don't want to ignore this invitation. With that, I straightened my shoulders and started off towards the nearest blue glow, which gave a sudden surprised hiccup of movement, followed by a whirl that looked suspiciously joyous. Brave new world, was it? What on earth were we going to encounter now? The forest came to life around us. It took me a moment to pinpoint what was happening. One moment we were in the relative quiet, and the next thing I noticed, there was life. It had crept up on me like a wraith-like banshee of a teenager. But where Rona was a harbinger of, "You done fucked up, mate," this felt jubilant in a way I'd not experienced in the passage of time since the Ascension. Birdsong echoed through the trees, chirping out the dregs of winter into the lush promise of a newfound spring. When I triggered connection, the flows of spirit around me were no longer barren currents, but swirling movement that danced between living creatures. Voles and rabbits, the occasional hare or stoat, birds on the wing, placid deer just out of sight but aware of our presence. And everything below the surface, too small to see with the naked eye unless it flew in front of our faces. Ants and clegs stirring to motion, a sleep-drunk adder dormant for winter, bees and beetles, ticks and spiders. The new awareness washed over me with wonder. I wasn't sure if the others could sense what I saw, but when I glanced over at Meeksy, he had tears in his eyes. He was always a bit of a soppy bloke, despite his imposing appearance, and when he caught me looking at him, he gave me a wobbly smile. "You see it, don't you?" he asked. "Aye, I do," I said. Ian gave us a questioning glance, straightening the belt at his hip where a dagger hung. The will-o'-the-wisps still danced before us, leading us deeper into the dimness. Their blue light bounced from tree trunks, lit moss with an eerie glow. Whatever we were about to find, we were growing closer. Even so, that didn't prepare me for my first sight of her. Chapter 2. All at once, the trees gave way to a clearing, or perhaps bower would be a better word for it. Not only did the trees form a fairy ring around an open bowl of lush emerald moss, but their branches curved over the top of it protectively. Mushrooms grew in delicate towers from the moss, thin stalks giving way to thinner caps so translucent they glowed in the floating light of the will-o'-the-wisps. And at the centre of the clearing was a woman. Cloaked in green to match the vibrance of the moss itself, at the sight of us, she pulled back her cowl to reveal her face. She was as fair as the mushroom caps, with skin as delicate, almost grey. Light from the wisps lit upon her, and seemed to coax a glow from within to welcome them. Her eyes were dark as loam, and her hair fell in waves, like yellow pollen, past her shoulders. When she rose from where she sat, my mind clicked into place as her legs unfolded, back-jointed and covered in deep brown fur, and capped with lustrous, cloven hooves. After a moment, her emerald green cloak fell to cover them. "Glashtig," I said, unbidden. "Yes," said the Glashtig. Rona had materialized by my side, and she gaped at the woman. "Why did you bring us here?" I asked. "Many reasons. Because you needed to see me," she replied. "Because I sense others in need of your aid. Because I have a message from the one you seek. She came to me in the night, and I was drawn to her as a beacon of truth and valor. It is she who told me that you follow." "Eilidh," I breathed. "Where is she?" Meeksy demanded, taking a step towards the Glashtig. "She has continued onward, on the heels of her quarry. The Glashtig beckoned us closer, and gestured around her at the soft moss. "Please, sit." "We need to catch up with her," Rona protested. "We don't have time to chat." "You do not have time not to speak with me," the Glashtig said cryptically. "Sit." After a moment of hesitation, we sat. Rona sat beside me, almost closer than I was comfortable with, but when I glanced over at her, I saw her worrying at a chunk of punky branch she must have picked up along the path, fingernails digging into the decomposing wood. Her fingers were grubby with it, but she didn't seem to notice. Around us, the trees seemed to lean in closer above our heads, the creak of branches melding with birdsong in the distance. Out of curiosity, I pulsed connection, and I barely contained the gasp. Spirit wove together with the branches above us, protectively forming a net that blanketed this hidden bower and the Glashtig within, and, of course, the 4 humans who had stumbled into her home. It came on a wave of peace, like I had sensed the intent of the will-o'-the-wisps, but my every instinct screamed that if someone were to violate the Glashtig's hospitality, that net would catch them tight and serve them up to her for slaughter. "Okay," I said to her, clearing my throat to disguise the momentary crack in my voice. "You say Eilidh sent a message. What is her message?" To my surprise, the Glashtig answered without dissembling or hesitation. She was quite distressed. The man-thing beyond the loch has taken someone she loves, along with many others. He seeks the kind of control that nature will not allow someone to wield. "Morag," I said, at the same time Mixie blurted out, "Shit, her gran." Rona fell still beside me, her fingers suddenly quiet on the branch. "First the simulacra, then the hearts," she said, her voice empty and hollow. Then fury lit like a sparker catching gas in her eyes, and she turned her gaze on me. "I told you he would move on to people. I told you." "I never disbelieved you," I said to her, and I reached out a hand to place on her shoulder. "We won't let him do this, Rona, I promise." "He already prepares," the Glashtig said softly. "Your friend would have you ready yourselves to assist her. I would also require this of you. Such an abomination cannot stand." "As if we'd do anything else," Ian scoffed. "All of us had plenty reason to hate Lord Bobag even before he went all Borg on Argyll. But if he thinks we're just going to—" "You must know that however powerful you are, you can only be in one place at a time," the Glashtig cautioned him. "That is my part of the message. You must prepare yourselves." Dread pooled in my stomach, and I kind of wished I could steal Rona's punky stick and shred it myself. "You're saying it might come down to saving the captives or saving something else," I said slowly. "Just so." The Glashtig met my gaze, her dark eyes almost black. "Why are you helping us?" Rona blurted out. "Everything else we've encountered has mostly tried to kill us. What's your game?" "My game?" The Glashtig's resonant voice drooped in confusion. "I do not understand your meaning, but I can answer your first question. This one," she nodded at me, "has taken pains to help not only his own kind, but others caught in the man-thing's web of suffering. All things are connected. All things speak to me. I hear their cries of relief, and I hear their lamentations. I help you, because I believe through you I can thus help them." "The heart," I murmured. "The horses," Rona looked at me. "Salin." "Just so." The Glashtig peered at me, and it felt as if I were on the receiving end of my own keen eye spell. I got the feeling this entity did not miss much. "I awakened not long ago. There is much I do not know about your people, but I do.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?